This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
First of all, it's a great zchus to share some divrei Torah with you. I want to share with you a personal thought. Today's bamish the happiest day of my life. To hear Yehuda say such a beautiful chabura.
Tuition paying off.
What? Bris Milah, you have a baby boy. So at the 8th day, you do a Bris Milah. And then Bar Mitzvah. This is mamish tremendous simcha. I don't even know. Ilu Malei Finu Shira Kayam. Ein anachnu maspik l'hayzos l'chad for the Rebbe and HaKadosh Baruch Hu to have this chus to be here today. So today's Rosh Chodesh Nisan. In Haggadah, the Baal Haggadah says, Yachol me Rosh Chodesh. That I would have thought today, instead of hearing a chabur from Yeshiva Glatstein, we should get together and say Haggadah Shel Pesach. There's a Havamina that you should say the Haggadah today, which is mashma that instead of the 15th, it's not Yachol both, right? The Haggadah doesn't say Yachol, you should be Mekayim in the mitzvah 2 times. Yachol me Rosh Chodesh. There's only one time a year you're Mekayim in the mitzvah of Sibur Yitzias Mitzrayim. The Baal Haggadah has a Havamina that you should do it today. And the Baal Haggadah says, really, you're right. We should have done it today. It's just as Gzeres HaKosov. It says Bayom Ahu. Bayom Ahu implies Pesach. But then the Baal Haggadah says, I would have thought, Yachol mi ba'od yoim. I would have thought you say the Haggadah on the 14th. What's the Havamina you say the Haggadah on the 14th? What happened on the 14th? So the Baal Haggadah said, no, you don't say it on the 14th. You say it on the 15th because it says, Ba'avur zeh, only b'shosh hamatzah munacham lefanecha. But we have to understand, that means without a Gzeras HaKosov, you would have thought either you do it on today, Rosh Chodesh, or, once we had the Pasuk Vayemahu, I would have thought you do it Yodaled. So what exactly happened on Rosh Chodesh that you would have thought you should say the Haggadah? And what happened on Yodaled that had it not been for Gzeras HaKosov, would have said the Haggadah on Yodaled? So if you look in the Rishonim on the Haggadah, now before we see that, we'll say, yeah. So if you look, the first thing is Reb Chaim al Rama, the Reb Chaim on Shas, in the stencil, Reb Chaim says the Havamina of saying the Haggadah on the 14th means, now Shabbos is getting later, so many people make an early Shabbos. Can you make an early Pesach? You could. You're allowed to make an early Yom Tif. Just you can't eat matzah then. So the Havamina that you would say the Haggadah on the 14th is if a person makes an early Pesach, then I would have thought you could also, just like you could make Kiddush, and just like it's also been Malacha, I would have thought you could be Masaper B'tzias Mitzrayim. So I have Gzeres HaKosov, Ba'avur zeh, Dafka the night of the 15th. But the Haggadah is not mashma that way. The Haggadah is mashma. Yachol mi ba'od yom. Mi ba'od yom is in the 15 minutes you make an early Yom Tif. Mi ba'od yom implies that during the day you could be Mekayim in the midst of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. So we have to understand, what was the Havamina that today should be the day to be Masaper B'Yitzias Mitzrayim, and what was the Havamina you should have done it on the 14th? So I saw 3 lines in the Gra yesterday. It's Mamish Dvarim Pshutim. Everybody's familiar with it. It never made an impact on me until yesterday. We know that if a person says the Haggadah on Leil Seder, you say the whole Haggadah, from Halach Ma'anya until the end of the Seder. How many words in the Haggadah? Anybody know? 1,820 words in the Haggadah. What's the significance of that? The number of times Shem Havaya appears in Chamisha Chumshei Torah are the number of the words of the Haggadah. Who says that? There's a sefer called, a rare sefer, it's called Ahavas HaTorah. Reb Pinchas Zalman Ish Horowitz. He counted the number of words in Haggadah Shel Pesach equals the number of times Shem Havaya appears in Chamisha Chumshei Torah. We could say, what's the significance of that? Very pasha. Was Paroi a mammon or was Paroi a kofer? He's a very confusing guy. Paro's a very confusing guy, because he has a dream. He doesn't know how to interpret the dream. So he turns to Yosef, and Paro said, I heard you know how to interpret dreams. So Yosef says, no, Biladai, Elokim Yana Shalem Paro. It's Ribbon Shalom. And Paro was a good Talmud. Paro said, Hanimtza Kazeh Ish Asharuach Elokim Boy. Paro never heard of Elokim. He doesn't know Elokim from a hole in the wall. This man Yosef stands in front of Paro and he says, Biladai Elokim Yana Shalem Paro. So Paro is a good Talmud. He wrote down every word. Yosef said Elokim, so Paro said, Hanimtza Kazeh Ish Asher Ruach Elokim Boy. Paro was mam in Elokim. And yet Moshe Rabbeinu comes and he says that I have to take Klal Yisrael out of Mitzrayim. And Paro says, Mi Hashem Asher Eshmam B'koiloi. What do you mean, Paro? Make up your mind. Yesterday you said, Hanimtza Kazeh Ish Asher Ruach Elokim Boy. And now today you're saying, Mi Hashem. So Arizal says, the Shalach Kodesh brings, Paro was a koifer in Elokim, in Shem Havaya, and he was a mammon be'Elokim. Paro believed in Elokim. He believed the Rebbeinu Shalom set up a world b'derech hateva. The Arizal says Paro was a mammon in Elokim. He believed that Kadosh Baruch Hu set up the world b'derech hateva, but he was a koifer in the Shem Havaya. So Moshe Rabbeinu is constantly wagging the stick in front of Paro. What does it say on the stick? Yud Kei Vav Kei. Paro, it's not enough to believe in Elokim. You have to believe in the Shem Havaya. You have to believe that the Rebbeinu Shalom could override the system. He's Meshaded Ma'arachoi Shamayim. That the Rebbeinu Shalom could destroy all the Mazolos. Paro was a mammon and Elokim. He was koifer b'Shem Havaya. So the purpose of Yitzias Mitzrayim is to teach Leman Teida Ki Ani Hashem. It's about the Shem Havaya. So there are the number of words in Haggadah Shel Pesach are equal to the number of times Shem Havaya appear in Chamisha Chamshei Torah. So we're going to say the Haggadah. Here's the problem. Let's say you say that they embittered our lives in Mitzrayim, that they enslaved us, and Hashem took us out. Are you Yotzei? No. Why not? Maschil b'gnos u'masayim b'shach. You have to say that in Mitzrayim we were oivdei avodah zarah. You knew that, right? You knew that. All of a sudden, the night of Pesach, we pull Terach out of the closet and we say, Terach, Avi Avram, Avi Nachar. We say that our Zaydas used to worship idols. If you don't say that we used to worship idols, lo yatsa. Does anybody have any biur? Why is it important to say we used to worship idols? Why is that? What's that got to do with Yitzias Mitzrayim? You ever wonder about that? If you don't say Mitchila Oivdei Avodah Zarah, you're not Yotzei the Mitzvah. What do you say?
The whole thing is that Hashem took us out from such a low point. That's what the Yitzias Mitzrayim is all about. That we're at such a low point that Hashem still came for us.
What's your name?
Kobe Jasky.
So Kobe's saying that if you want to appreciate the Yitzia, you have to know what the Yitzia was from. So you have to know the Yitzia was from a very low point. So the Gra says this idea, but the way he frames it is that Hashem took us out. He took us out of Golus. But what is Golus? There's Golus Haguf, and there's Golus HaNefesh. There's a physical Golus. So physical Golus, we know what that means. We're making pyramids. We were enslaved. They beat us. They brutalized us. But Hashem also took out Klal Yisrael from a Golus HaNefesh, from a spiritual exile. What was the spiritual exile? We were Oived Avodah Zarah. We were not Maminim on the highest level. So if you don't say we were in Golus HaNefesh, you're not Yotzei. Because if you weren't in a Golus HaNefesh, there was no Geulas HaNefesh. Zok the Goy, you must say Mitchila Oivdei Avodah Zarah. Why? Because a person has to know clearly the Rebbeinu Shalom took us out of a physical bondage and the spiritual bondage. So you have to say that things were bitter. Vaya anunu, vaya reu oisanu, and you also have to say mitchila oivdei avodah zarah ha'avoseinu va'achshav kervano hamakam la'avodasai. So there are two things happening in the night of Yitzias Mitzrayim. There's a physical redemption. There's a spiritual redemption. If you look in the Rishonim on the words mitchila yachal merash chodesh, the Rishonim say, Yachal Merash Chodesh, Sha'az Maschal HaGeula. The Geula happened on Rosh Chodesh. And when the Haggadah says, Yachal mi ba'oid yaim, listen to what the Rishonim say, the Archos Chaim, the Rashbam, the Shiboilei Haleket. Yachal mi ba'oid yaim, what did we do? What did we do being ba'oid yaim? What did we do on the day of the 14th? We took the Karban Pesach and we shechted it. You know, it's very interesting. You know, the Yom Tif of the 15th of Nisan, what is it called? Anybody know? Pesach, right? No such thing. Not the Chol HaTorah Kula is it ever referred to as Pesach. The Yom Tiv on the 15th is Chag HaMatzos. What day is Pesach? B'Chodesh HaRishon. B'Arba Yom LaChodesh. Pesach LaShem. Bein HaArbayim Pesach LaShem. The Yom Tiv of Pesach begins the 14th of Nisan at Chatzos. By the way, there's an amazing Pnei Yeshua. We know that on Erev Pesach after Chatzos you now do Malacha. The question is why? There's Machlokes Rishonim, Midairaisa, Midrabanan. Pnei Yeshua says very pashut. It's Asr Midairaisa to do Yom Tif like Chol Hamoed on Erev Pesach. Why? Because it's Pesach. It's Yom Tif. What do you mean? I thought the 15th is Pesach. No, the 15th is Chag HaMatzos. Pesach is the 14th Erev Pesach. It's a Yom Tif. The Ramah writes in Yordei Shin Tzadi Tes that if somebody's in Avel, the Avelus stops Chatzos on Erev Pesach because it's Yom Tif. It's in the Parsha of the Moyadim. So there were two Geulas in times of Pesach. There was Geulas Haguf. When did the Geulas Haguf happen? When we left. When did the Geulas HaNefesh happen? Well, when we got out of the clutches of the Avodah Zarah of Mitzrayim. So when exactly did we get out of the clutches of the Avodah Zarah? So let's think about this. When we were eating lamb chops the night of the Seder, we were eating the Avodah Zarah. So l'chayra, we really rid ourselves of Avodah Zarah by the Achilas Korban Pesach. Or do we say no? Maybe it started a little bit earlier. Maybe when we shechted the Korban Pesach and we slaughtered the Avodah Zarah on the 14th, on the Yom Tif of Pesach, maybe that's when we were spiritually redeemed from Mitzrayim. So the Havamina of the Mechilta, the Havamina of the Baal Haggadah, is what's the Iker Yitzia, the Geulas Haguf or the Geulas HaNefesh? What would you think is the main Yitzia? The fact that we're physically free, or the fact that we're free from belief in Avodah Zarah and we're now the Am Hashem? What's the Iker Geula? The Iker Geula is the Geulas HaNefesh. So the Havamina is, you should have spoke about the Haggadah on the 14th when you shech the Korban Pesach, because that's when you're slaughtering the Avodah Zarah Mitzrayim. Why that over the 14th? You know, remember the Gemara in the end of Tainus? When do we fast for Churim Beis HaMikdash? The 9th. So Rabbi Yochanan says, if I would have been around, I would have fasted on the 10th. Why? Because Beis HaMikdash basically burnt down on the 10th. They just ignited it on the 9th. And the Gemara says, what do the Chachamim hold? Aschalto de Paranusa Adifa. You go by the beginning. It's not when it was burning, it was when it was ignited. At the beginning of something, that's the acute point of something. In other words, when you want to commemorate something, when you want to remember something, you remember when it started. So the same way when it comes to Churban, we commemorate when it was ignited. L'chayr, when it comes to Geula, we should commemorate when it started. When did Geulas HaNefesh start? Shchitas Korban Pesach Yudalid. I would have thought the Iker Sipur Yitzis is during the day. And the answer is, it really should have been. It's just Exeris HaKosav. You got to wait till the night. But the question is, Yachal Merash Chodesh. Yachal Merash Chodesh. By the way, there's an amazing Keren Oira. By the way, everything I'm telling you comes from a new sefer. I got it on, one day this week. The name of the sefer is Zman Cheruseinu, Rab David Kohen, Rosh Yeshiva of Chevron. I'm putting together 3 different mamarim on maybe Yod Aleph, Yod Beis, Yod Gimel. Basically, the Keren Oira says, you have a question? Okay, good, right. HaKadosh Baruch Hu came to Moshe, Vayomer Hashem al Moshe ve'al Aaron be'eretz Mitzrayim lemar on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. But how, we have to try to explain how that's the beginning of the Geula. How Rosh Chodesh Nisan is the beginning of the Geula. It is the first mitzvah. So you could say, what? Okay, good. So the first mitzvah, Shenetztavu Yisrael, was bringing Klal Yisrael under the umbrella of Hashgachas Hashem and Avodas Hashem, taking them out of the Gulas Mitzrayim. Okay, good. There's an amazing Ritva. The Ritva on the Haggadah, on the words Uvemoira Gadol, the Ritva says there were two. Right? What does the Baal Haggadah say? Uvemoira Gadol Zu Gilui Shechina. The Ritva says there were two Giluyim in Mitzrayim. One was the night of the 15th, and the Ritva says there was Gilui Shechina on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, like this tzaddik said over there. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe v'al Aaron be'eretz Mitzrayim lemar. That was also Gilui Shechina. There was a Gilui Shechina at that moment. Let's think a little bit about Paroi. By Makas Barad, when Paroi saw Makas Barad, what was Paro's reaction? Hashem hatzadik va'ani va'ami harashan. Hashem is righteous and I'm wicked. It's mamish a very humble tshuva, no? Hashem hatzadik v'ani v'ami harashan. That's a far cry from me, Hashem asher eshma b'koylak. Now let's make a cheshbon. Makas b'choros was Pesach. If every Makkah took a month, so that's 3 months earlier, right? Because Choshech was around Purim time, Arveh was like Tu B'Shvat time, and Barad was like Tesvav, Teves. By Makas Barad, Paroi said, Hashem hatzadik v'ani v'ami harashan. And then a month later, by Makas Arveh, Vayigoresh oisa milafana. Paroi said, get lost, I don't want to see you. And then by Makas Choshech, Paroi said, Al toisei for ois panai, I don't ever want to look at you again. What's going on? The man's out of his mind. 2 months earlier, he did a tshuva shleim, he clapped al chet, Hashem hatzadik v'ani ami v'harasham. And then a month later, he chases Moshe out, and a month later, he says, I never want to see you again.
And Makas Kinim, they said it's the finger of Hashem.
Yeah.
They would acknowledge Hashem and stick like them.
Yeah, but when Vayomer hachatum el pari etzba elokim he, and the next pasuk is Vayichazik Hashem slei pari. He didn't pay attention to anything they said. By the way, Arizal says, why? Because Pari was mammon in Elokim. He's not mammon in Yud Kei Vav Kei. So when they said etzba elokim, Pari says, yeah, so I know that, but I don't believe in Yud Kei Vav Kei. What are you telling me? That's how the Arizal learns Kinim. But there's an amazing Aruch HaShulchan. Aruch HaShulchan, in the very beginning of Hilchos Pesach, Siman Tav Chav Tes, Aruch HaShulchan says that Paroi was being beaten, he was being brutalized, he was being forced to be mammon, and he almost came to it by Makas Barad. But you know what Paroi said? My God is the Seh, the Tleh, the Mazel of Nisan. If I could just wait it out and extend this a little bit till we get closer to Nisan, my God's going to come through for me. So by Barad, Paroi said, Hashem Hatzag v'ani v'ami v'Hashem. A month later, Paroi is getting empowered. He's getting closer to Nisan. So Paroi said what? Vayigoresh Hashem. He chased him out. And as Adar's coming, Shloshim Yoim Koidem Nisan, as Tleh is coming, Paroi said, get lost. It's almost my God's month. The mazel of Nisan was the mazel of Paroi. Paroi said, if I could only reach Nisan, I'm going to backtrack on all my tshuva, and I'm going to put myself under the umbrella of my mazel. Comes Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and Hashem says, I davka waited for this month, which Paroi thought was under his control, was under his God, to demonstrate that his mazel has no koyach, and I'm going to remove any thoughts of Avodah Zarah from Klal Yisrael to get to, forever. Hashem waited until Nisan, and Hashem said about Nisan, HaChodesh Hazeh Lochem, the month that belonged to Paroi, I'm giving it to you. So it comes out 1:30, right? Yeah. So let me finish. It comes out, there are different stages in the Gulas HaNefesh of Klal Yisrael. The biggest stage was Shchitas, the Avodah Zarah of Paroi, Leil Tesvav. I'm sorry. The biggest stage was Achilas Karm Pesach Leil Tesvav. A little bit before that, the Shchita of the Tleh also removed Klal from Avodah Zarah, like Rashi says, Mishchu u'kechu lachem seh. Rashi says, Mishchu Yedechem and Avodah Zarah. And a little bit more before was on the 10th when we took the Seh on Shabbos Hagadol. But already on Rosh Chodesh was the beginning of the Geulas HaNefesh of Klal Yisrael, where Hashem was demonstrating that I waited Dafka until this month, and Dafka this month, I'm saying this month, belongs to you. So it comes out, the beginning of Geulas Yisrael happened today. And if not for a Choik and a Gzeres HaKosov, we'd be getting together today to say Haggadah Shel Pesach, because already the Rebbeinu Shalom came, and did we do tshuva? We didn't do any tshuva. Did we deserve it? We didn't deserve it. It was mamish rachamei shamayim. Hashem was merachim on Klal Yisrael to choose us, to take us, to yank us out of the Tumas Mitzrayim. The Iker Hascholas Hageula happened on this day. And therefore there's a Havamina Yachal Merash Chodesh, but Talmud Lo Yimar B'Yom Hahu. So today is already the Haschola of Geulas Yisrael. And I'm going to let you all go to Mincha. And I wish you all Hatzlach in the rest of the Zman. And a tremendous Yashikayach to the Heilige Rebbe, Rabbi Sender, who...
Is this the new save from the other thing?
Yeah, it's in the new... It's in the new one, yeah. It came out last year. It was in the stores for like a few days. It was gone, but now it's available. It's a Gevaldic. Elokim is Teva. Elokim is Teva. Is L'mal Mana Teva. Elokim is... Elokim is...
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.